Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Life Science Rundown, the podcast where we discuss current regulatory complexities facing the life science industry and explore innovative ways to overcome those challenges. I am your host, Nicholas Catman, President and CEO of the FDA Group. Before we get started, here's a quick word about who we are. The FDA Group is a technology and consulting firm that helps life science companies in the areas of regulatory affairs and quality assurance in areas such as submissions, audits, mock inspections, staff augmentation, and remediation. So if you ever find yourself in need, just head over to the FDAgroup.com to check us out and get in touch. So today we are going to be talking about how can life science leaders drive innovation while maintaining regulatory confidence as they scale global quality systems across complex post-separation and AI-enabled operating models. So today, as our guest to help answer and address this question is Julio Salwen. Hello, Julio. How are you?
I'm doing very well. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So before we jump in, would you kindly introduce yourself?
Sure. As Nicola said, I'm Julio Salwen. I'm the Chief Quality Officer for the MiniMed Group. We're a diabetes company that recently spun off from Medtronic. I'm an engineer by training and at heart. I have over 35 years of experience in pharma, med devices, and diagnostics fields, both in manufacturing and quality management, including regulatory compliance in the US and outside of the United States.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. Without further ado, what does regulatory confidence really mean in a rapidly innovating AI-enabled and quality environment, and how has that definition changed over the last 5 years?
Well, it is a controlled, transparent patient innovation. Okay, it's not just about paper compliance. Confidence is about risk being understood and decisions can be explained, which is a key factor. It's not about here's a decision, it's why we got to that decision.
Mm-hmm.
5 years ago was more about the documentation, validation, procedural, here you are, this is what you do, kind of a little bit more canned. Today is a little bit more fluid, but it also requires governance, data integrity, accountability, and monitoring. And I'll stress monitoring is really important in this because we're changing every single day.
Mm-hmm. I know one of the things that a lot of people talk about is kind of the struggle between over compliance or over optimizing their compliance at the expense of innovation. So, what do life science leaders need to do in order to balance those two issues?
Well, first of all, is talking about what risk we're trying to control versus what will the auditor think? That's a very typical one. It's like people start by saying what the auditor will think. We're trying to please an auditor, and that has to change. You know, we have to shift into improving safety and quality. I'm a big fan of QMSR and the shift that FDA did because it enables that. It enables innovation by using risk management in a more effective way.
Mm.
Compliance is a secondary, it's a side benefit from a strong quality system. Should not be the main objective. And that's where leaders have to not think about, okay, how do I comply? But more, how do I do this? And then, by the way, it's in compliance. So you do the compliance check right after, not upfront.
It kind of sounds a little bit like students saying, "How do I pass the test?" Yeah. I know we want to pass the test, but that's we're trying to learn something. If you learn it, you'll pass the test, right? So it's
Absolutely. The
putting
test would be the way to demonstrate that you learned.
right,
But you
right.
get learned. Yeah, that's a great analogy. I
Yeah.
like that. I might steal it from you.
All right, fair enough. I won't charge you this time. Um, so, where do quality leaders take the biggest regulatory risks unintentionally?
Well, it's basically an informal adoption. When we talk about AI, you have to have control. I mentioned earlier about monitoring. So
Hmm.
you need to know. You can't just tell people, go and use AI. That would be a big regulatory risk unintentionally. You just can't ChatGPT compliance or ask ChatGPT. AI, I personally use that as a research assistant. I call some of the tools, those are my research assistant. But I'm making the decisions. That human loop is critically important. So leaders that don't set that tone, that do not put that clear definition on what is AI for, they're taking big regulatory risk because people are going to blindly follow those tools, those research assistants.
One of the I was reading a book called Reshuffle, and one of the things they talk about is we thought at a point that radiologists were going to go away. We found that hasn't been the case. But as we move deeper and deeper into this new revolution of AI, focusing on critical things where a human has to be an approver is where the value for the human is going to increase. And conversely, those tasks that don't have critical aspects to it can be automated. And, that's kind of what the separation is going to become over time.
But to your point about the radiologists, they need different skills today.
Right.
So it's not being replaced, but the skills that they need today are very different to be effective. They're probably doing 3 times, 10 times the number of cases. I don't know. I'm not a physician, not even close to that. But certainly they need to use the tools in an effective way and know their risks. The same with us, kind of thing in the life science space.
You're exactly right. How should global quality governance evolve while operating models shift from centralized to hybrid structures?
So we got to change that control mentality. Control tower mentality is typical in quality, it's typical in bigger organizations. You have central control of everything versus establishing standards, accountability, and escalation mechanisms. Okay. So when you have a hybrid structure, you need consistency, okay? Clear principles, decision rights. So global quality should have clear policies, minimum standards. In my philosophy, it's like, what are the critical few versus the important many? A definition of risk. What is a significant risk? You get a regulatory inquiry from an agency. You need then a person to understand, is that carrying a risk or is that a routine question? So they need to understand that locally. When you're talking in a global environment, you get a question from FDA, might be totally different tone than a question from HSA in Singapore, for example. So you establish those guardrails and equip them with the skills to interpret that question or interpret the issue and see when you need escalation, what are the guiding principles. Otherwise, you end up controlling everything, control tower at the center, even though you call it hybrid.
What role would you suggest senior leadership play in setting risk tolerance for innovation within GXP environments, and how explicit should they be?
Well, risk aversion is the typical problem with senior leaders. And that's what they kind of put. And I say they because I work really hard to ensure that people understand that they can take risk, which means things can go wrong. So establishing that, making sure, driving the right behavior by, okay, something went wrong. It's not a high risk. Okay, now it's understood. Now you learn from it and move on. But if leaders take those events and make a big deal out of it, that's when that becomes a problem. They should be explicit. We all should be explicit about it's okay to take risk. No patient risk, for example. You're not taking, we all work for patients, so we're not taking patient risk. But there are other type of risks that we take, kind of thing. So it has to be obvious. It's not a policy, it's a behavior, in my opinion.
Yeah. One of the things I like to say is the most consistent thing about me is I treat everybody different. When it comes to risk, everything should be treated differently. So as you're preparing for an event, the number of controls have to be on par with the level of risk. And conversely, if there's an issue and something goes wrong, if it's not critical or it's not something that's causing havoc, it should be treated in the light that it has kind of come to bear. Does that make sense?
Commensurate with the risk.
Right.
I call it in the old days when I was raised a slap on the wrist. Okay,
Yeah.
something went wrong. Okay, that's a
Yeah.
slap on the wrist.
Yeah.
The world is not coming to an end.
Yeah.
And it just takes one event that should be a slap on the wrist,
Yeah.
make it a big deal, the organization becomes risk averse.
Yeah. Yeah. I know there's definitions to this, but there was a guy who was talking about risk, and he drew two little stick figures, and he made a little pit, but it was shallow, but it was really wide. And then he made another pit, and it was super deep, but it wasn't very wide, right? And so in one risk, the likelihood of you falling in is pretty high, but it's not severe. Whereas the
Yeah,
other risk was it's unlikely you're going to fall in, but if you do, it's really bad, right?
exactly.
Yeah.
I
So,
like that analogy. Yeah, and it makes sense. And that's what you need to understand. That's where the human is so important. AI is not going to give you that.
hmm.
AI
Well,
might give you both as equal for the most part. And that's where the human comes in and say, hold it, they're not
hmm,
equal. This one is shallow, this one is deep.
hmm, right. Although I do think AI is going to be able to distinguish between those. That doesn't mean you can take the human out, but I think my hope is that AI will at some point be able to say, this is how I interpret the level of risk, and the human says, I agree.
It, it will. That's why I mentioned it changes every day.
Hmm,
Literally every day you have a different tool. You train your own tools. You train your tools for your risk tolerance as well. It
hmm,
might be deep in my risk tolerance, in yours might be shallow.
hmm.
And that's the beauty of AI tools that you can train with your level of risk. So I agree with you. It'll come to that. Today, I would not make a decision solely on that. I would
What
use that as a reference, but I'll gain more confidence as we go.
you know about the warning letter, right? The company
Yeah,
in
and the specs coming out of an AI tool. Oh,
yeah,
this is
yeah.
what the AI tool told me. No, it's not quite. It's not. Otherwise, anyone can form a company and do it for. Let me buy
Right.
a couple of AI tools and that's it.
And nobody's held accountable.
Yeah.
Well, let's stay on this. So, how can organizations introduce AI into quality systems? And the question as it reads is without increasing risk, which we know that's not a real thing. So, can you comment on that?
Yeah, so as we spoke earlier, no such thing as zero risk. I mean,
Mm,
that's the reality. And again, that's why the QMSR framework brings so much into that. It starts there. It starts with in our, in life sciences about patient and user risk. So the goal is really to have controlled risk,
mm,
proportionate risk. You start with the lower risk and then you start building your confidence in the output.
hmm
I built an agent on one of our tools. We all know that warning letters are posted every Tuesday. Well, when I built the agent, I test the agent and it needs two key warning letters.
mm,
So I trained the agent kind of thing. That's a low risk situation. I'm just, monitoring what's happening in the industry.
hmm
So I could use it right off the bat because it's really general knowledge. I'm not making a decision based.
Right.
Uh, so, research, as I mentioned, research is a great research tool. So that's how you introduce without increasing your risk, kind of thing. It's supporting what you already do.
Mm-hmm.
Drafting documents, I think is a very good way of starting to introduce AI without increasing significantly in risk. The important thing is decisions should be made with qualified professionals. And I will insist, qualified professionals. Not everybody's qualified. The fact that you would be a quality professional doesn't mean now that you're a qualified quality AI professional.
Right.
Because you need to understand that a quality professional might think that's a validated tool in the typical mindset kind of thing.
Right.
Oh, this is a mind. So that's how you need to have those core controls, have education, a lot of education, classify, still see the risk, have a risk management mindset. And that's how you will introduce with the risk being commensurate of the use.
Mm-hmm. Let's shift a little bit. Same topic, but a different vantage point. So, would you say, are some of the most common failure points regulators see in scaled global quality systems, and how can leaders proactively design around them?
Yeah. So failure points are fragmentation, inconsistency. One of the things really, really important in a risk management process is to have consistency of application, not of decisions, but application. So there's where you find, weak execution of those systems kind of thing. I go back to the qualifications. I'm a firm believer on qualifying the people. We're less and less every day. That's what AI and all these tools are being. The qualifications are critically important. Policies is critically important. Policies that describe what is the system, how those can be used, what not to be used. And automating with processes. So one of the pitfalls in people is you don't have a process, but now you have a tool. In this case, AI or whatever. And you take that process that is weak and just trying to automate, excuse me, and get it to a tool. Well, you have a broken process.
It's going to remain broken.
Yeah, it's broken. So it's you're not going to proactively design on something that is already broken. You have to go and fix that first, and then see how the tools, including AI, works in that.
Well, let's paint a picture for me. So let's say there is a high-performing organization. What does it look like? How do they align quality, IT, and data science teams, especially so that innovation isn't held back?
Yeah, well, starts with having a shared model, okay, not a handoff. That is critical. You have quality, IT, data science. If they're operating in silos, that's where I think the breakdown comes. That's where innovation is held. Because they're not thinking, they're not complementing, they're just going from one to another. So it has to start there, where you say, okay, we are here, we bring an expertise like quality, IT brings an expertise, data science brings an expertise. And then you get it that, okay, what is our role? What is our process knowledge? IT, for example, quality brings the risk. This should be kind of put in that risk framework. IT brings architecture, security kind of thing, and data science brings models and analytics. That has to be together, okay? Need to be involved from the get-go. To me, innovation is held because someone goes upfront without the other elements, and then it has to go back. Someone in whatever, data science is making great things behind the scenes without considering the IT infrastructure, the security, for example, the architecture needed, and obviously not the risk, not understanding the risk, particularly patients' risk. So getting those together, having the right governance, vocabulary is very important. How do you call things? Sometimes can be missed because of that. And then that it's typically smooth sailing from the get-go that way.
Okay. We know we're in a new world. I would call it a revolution. And if you're not growing, then you're dying. So what advice do you have for quality leaders today? What types of qualifications and capabilities should they be developing as we move into this new world?
I would say two things. You need to be strong in risk management.
Hmm.
To me, that's critical because as quality leaders, you need to understand risk and how to manage risk, but you need to be technologically literate. And I call it myself know enough to be dangerous.
Yeah, okay.
So you can ask the questions. You
Right.
need to couple those two. You
Hmm.
understand the risks from a quality, from product quality, patient, etc.
Hmm.
You have the compliance in the back of your head, but you understand the technology.
Hmm.
If you don't understand the technology, then you have a problem because you're going to hear things and you're just going to follow by trust.
Right.
And quality, one of the old school saying, trust but verify.
Hmm.
So I spend now quite amount of time learning. I mentioned like the warning letters. I'm building
Hmm.
agents myself just to understand what's a capability. And that's important quality leaders have to do.
Hmm.
Okay. You need to understand quality systems. You can't just be a PowerPoint leader. You need to understand the regulation. Today, again, QMSR, I love the framework of the compliance plan because it brings the ISO 13485, ISO 14971 together into real application. You need to know that.
Yeah.
As a quality leader, you just can't have, in the old days, you could have, like I used to have, like an expert in QMS.
Hmm.
You need to know those. Do I know every single detail? No, I don't. I have, an
Hmm.
organization to do it, but you got to know enough to be dangerous.
Hmm.
The last element is you have to ask strong questions. That's why those two come into, okay, now I can ask. How I can ask the right questions to really understand, what is the risk.
Yeah. I think leaning on risk management, fine tuning that skill set, I really like that first part of your answer. I also like how you said, and this was insinuated, is you don't have to be an expert in the technology, but you have to be, know enough to be dangerous. Here's a difficult question. Um, how do people know they've reached a point where they know enough to be dangerous and they can feel comfortable and confident versus they're not there yet?
When you are, at least me as a leader, if I'm asking questions and people can respond them right off, I haven't asked challenging questions yet.
Oh, okay.
When they says like, oh, I haven't thought about that.
Okay.
Okay, now you're bringing your value. You're not just checking boxes kind of thing.
Oh.
I use the analogy when I, coach people in their leadership journey and say, how do you know that you have reached your limits of your, is when you cross that boundary. When you cross that boundary and then you get that slap on the wrist and say, hey, you
Mm.
went above, that wasn't within your pay grade.
Mm.
Now you know, okay, your limit.
Mm.
But until then, you don't know your limit. You're
Yeah.
just operating in safe zone. So we
Mm.
as leaders have to make questions to the point that, okay, not to be difficult.
Right, right, right.
It's
But you
just to
look at you
force
look at for
that
the
critical
holes.
thinking.
Hmm. Yeah.
So
That's
that's
really
how I
good.
see it. If I haven't asked questions, if they
Mm.
know all the questions right there, dun, dun, dun,
Mm.
I'm not helping them. I'm just checking boxes. So I
Mm.
need to get better at that. And in this world, you're never done.
Mm. No, you're never done. That's a fact. In fact, before AI, I was always a constant learner, read books, go to seminars, trainings, presentations, conferences. But every time I would engage in that type of behavior, I always felt like I was getting an advantage. But in today's AI world, I'm doing all of those same things, but it's more of a I need to in order to just be on par, right? So it's
Yeah,
the same amount of work, but not kind of the same type
that's okay.
of sentiment in terms of how I feel. Does that make
Yeah,
sense?
yeah. I use an analogy. It's like you're going up on an escalator that is coming down.
Ah,
So what happens when you stop, or
yeah.
even when you get to the next level that you're aiming to?
Mm,
The second that you stop, you're going backwards.
yeah. Yeah.
So you're essentially always kind of just catching up
Yeah.
to where
Before I
it
was
is.
on stairs and now I'm on an
E-
escalator going backwards. That's a really good
e-
analogy. I like that.
Exactly. In the
Yeah.
past, you would be, okay, I'm making progress.
Mm,
I feel like I know more.
right.
I feel like I have more to do, more that I can contribute. Now,
Mm,
no, I'm just catching up.
yeah. Yeah. And I think for all intents and purposes, unless you feel differently, I think we have to feel comfortable with that because I think that is the world that we're in. And so I think if we can feel comfortable with that, then we can accept it, right? Because in isolation, when I'm doing all of this learning on AI and I'm feeling that way, I feel like I'm inadequate, but I think it's good for us to know, no, 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 everybody else feels the same way. Just okay, so A, don't be too hard on yourself, and B, don't stop walking up the backwards escalator, right?
Wholeheartedly agree. It's
Yeah.
like you have to be comfortable. And roles like mine as a head of quality, it
Mm,
can be risk averse. You know that you're vulnerable every single minute, every single hour. But to your point, it's not like I'm going to die because something can happen, but I know it can happen.
mm,
It's not, a solid process where you think nothing can go wrong. Yes,
mm.
things
Yeah.
can go wrong and you're comfortable. And you're always trying to make sure what can go wrong tomorrow. To that, I
Mm.
need to catch up. What can go wrong tomorrow that I can prevent today?
Well, let's talk about tomorrow. So, looking ahead 3 to 5 years, what will regulators expect from life science companies using AI, especially across global quality systems, and what should leaders start doing now to prepare?
Yeah, well, I think that looking ahead, to be honest, is today.
Hmm.
It's again, it's changing, but you need a more structured governance if you don't have it of AI. How do you put it in? Because the companies can put AI, but how do you put that governance into a quality management system? You can use AI widely, but then into quality systems, then you have certain boundaries that you have to work. So a company that goes really fast on AI,
Mm,
then you have to commensurate that and manage that through the quality system.
mm,
What you will look, I mentioned earlier about monitoring is critically important. How do you monitor the use of AIs? Number of agents, utilization, kind of thing. How are people making decisions? Um, Change management. Again, AI is changing every day. So the policy that you have for AI today might not be good enough for 6 months or a year from now
mm,
because there's some other tools.
right.
Accountability, clear intended use. That has to be together. Okay, what's intended use? That has to be clear to everyone in the organization. So that's where you have risk based. Okay, what are the things you can use that research assistant for without having to do a lot of validation versus, hey, you're making a decision here on a product. AI is not making that decision.
Mm,
So you need to inventory. At the end of the day, what we should do now is inventory those AI use cases.
mm,
That's what the journey we're going through. You need to classify them by risk to, to show the organization some kind of type of risk, things that you can do, things that how you should do, and things that probably you can't do.
mm,
And there's complexities there that you have to consider, not only quality systems, but you have to think about, patient information, data, so it's beyond just quality systems. It's HIPAA compliance and all those kind of things.
mm,
And training. You have to train people on those skills. The people, your best people today might not be your best people in 3-5 years from now if you don't train them. So our job is making sure that they are, because you train them along the journey. You train yourself, not only them, as ourselves as well.
Right. Yeah. And the term disruptive technologies is not new, but I think this is the pinnacle of disruptive technologies. And I think in your last answer, you outlined some of the core principles that are going to allow us to navigate through those choppy waters. Because I'm pretty certain they're only going to get choppier, but we can, as quality leaders, go through those with confidence, resting on those principles that you previously mentioned.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, Julio, this has been fantastic. I really appreciate you joining. Before we close, what would you like to leave the audience with?
Use AI today. Is there.
Mhm.
You can use it responsibly, put the framework, manage the risk. The framework today is under QMSR and ISO 13485. It's aligned to that. But train yourself and your teams. Don't underestimate the need that as quality leaders you have on really knowing yourself, what you're walking into.
Yep. Excellent. Thank you again so much. For everyone listening, as always, if you find conversations like this valuable, please share it with a colleague or your professional network. Subscribe to get updates of new episodes at thefdagroup.com/podcast, and follow the FDA Group on LinkedIn for industry updates and cutting edge insights. If you'd like to talk about project or resource needs, just head over to thefdagroup.com to get in touch, or feel free to connect with me personally on LinkedIn. Thank you all so much for tuning in, and we will see you all on the next rundown.